Hello, everyone, and welcome to our live. Tonight, we discuss the outlook, performances, and policies of the JLP, the PNP, and the UIC so that you, our viewers, can understand the choices that are before you. Tonight, we have with us Mr. Joseph L. Patterson, President of the UIC. We also have with us Mr. Blake Brown, a representative from the Jamaica Labour Party. He is president of the Young Jamaica, which is a youth arm of the Jamaica Labour Party. We also have other guests that will be joining us very shortly. And so we look forward to that as well. Gentlemen, a pleasant good night.
Good night to you as well, Mr.
Good,
Nelson.
good evening, Mr. Nelson. Good evening, viewers. And just a slight correction: I'm not the president of Young Jamaica. I am the policy research and policy director. However, I'm representing the organization tonight.
Right. I stand corrected there. Thank you so much for that. I do appreciate that. Gentlemen, okay, so I'll give you a minute or so just to I know you mentioned your title and so on, but just to give us, perhaps in a minute or so, your view and your stance on where we are today as a nation. Mr. Patterson, you want to start, or you'd like
Well,
to?
I was hoping, Mr. Moderator, you would first kind of tell our viewers what's really going on here and who you're expecting to be joining us. I am seeing Miss Maureen Brown on the call. I gather we should have some members from the PNP representing as well. Maybe you can update us on that, what we're going to do
Yes.
today, how it's going to go, and then we can go into our opening remarks, and then we can start discussing policies, I guess.
Yes, no problem, Mr. Patterson. No problem, Mr. Patterson. So, yeah, for sure. Miss Brown, I think your mic is unmuted.
Yeah, present.
Miss Brown?
The signal a go, man.
Okay, so I'm just gonna put our backstage or so. All right, so we should have with us as well Mr. Glenn Bishop. And Mr. Bishop, he is someone with strong convictions on the issues in our country. He sees himself as neutral, so not necessarily representing a political party itself. So we look forward to seeing if Mr. Bishop will be joining us. We should have also had with us Mr. Dwight Brooks from the PNP-YO as a representative of the People's National Party. I spoke to Mr. Brooks early on, so I do expect him to be joining us. So hopefully we'll see Mr. Brooks soon. We also should be having Mr. Doctor Mark Ricketts. So we are also looking forward to having Dr. Ricketts and so on, so he can introduce himself and we can let you guys know more about Dr. Ricketts. So looking forward to the discussion tonight, gentlemen. So in terms of comparing and contrasting the policies of the registered political parties, we have the Jamaica Labour Party, the People's National Party, and the United Independence Congress, the UIC. So as we stated before, gentlemen, 1 minute take on your stance. We have Mr. Bishop, Glenn Bishop, joining us. Just now, I just mentioned, Mr. Bishop, that I told our viewers that we should be expecting you. So I'm going to allow the members of the panel to give us a minute take, your view, your stance on the country's affairs.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. And since we are on the UIC turf, so to speak, I'm going to defer to the others to speak first, and then I will go afterwards. Just being a good host here.
Okay, so Mr. Brown, do you want to begin? I think your mic.
Mr. Brown.
It's still
governing
muted.
party, or it's unmuted now.
Right.
Perfect. And as a member of the governing party, it's important that we are able to stand on our achievements and what we have done with our time in government and the mandate that the people has given us. I can stand here and proudly say that Jamaica is in the best place it has ever been in its history. In terms of major crimes being down, the first time in over 20 years, an economy that is consistently and reliably growing, public debt which is down, and of course, major investments in infrastructure, in education, in water, in utilities. Jamaica is looking up, and we have much more work to be done. However, we can proudly say that our 8 years in government, we have used that time and we have used that time well.
Right, right. Thank you, Mr. Brown, for your outlook from your party standpoint. Mr. Bishop, your take?
Um, uh, I I'm just going to introduce myself, Glenn Bishop, independent thinker is the entity that I think I want to represent this evening. Just an independent product of the Jamaican education system. And in saying that I am a product of the Jamaican education system, I want to add that a good education never ends. So even though I got the framework for my education from our system, I ventured onward in my education to realize that our system has been shortchanging the Jamaican populace. The fact is, a child can't know the value of the money that you give them, except for the fact for their needs. So if you give a child $1,000 bill, you'll find that the child will go to a shop and somebody can give them one lollipop and take the entire $1,000 because the lollipop is the greatest desire for that child. I think I am here to I want to respond to what I heard Mr. Brown saying to say that I think the Jamaica Labour Party is giving that lollipop to Jamaica and taking the value or the real value of Jamaica to state your accomplishments as the signal to say that the country is moving in a better place. That is hardly, I think, what it takes. You see, the average Jamaican should feel that upward mobility from which you speak. And if we are always going to look at what we were able to get from the process, and I mean we as individuals, then I think the nation will always be falling while a few individuals enrich themselves.
Thank you, Mr. Bishop, for your independent viewpoint there. The independent thinker is very important in Jamaica. Mr. Patterson?
Yeah, I would like to take this opportunity to thank all of our viewers who are watching tonight and hope that you will find the conversation enriching and informative. It's very important when we think about Jamaica that we don't think in isolation in terms of just 8 years. We need to think about what has been happening to Jamaica since the two colonial parties have took charge of this country. You know, for some 356 years, the colonial powers had our people under the oppression of chattel slavery. And then 100 years after that, in terms of colonization, having a colonial government in charge. And then in 1944, we got self-governance. The JLP won the first two terms on the self-governance, and they also won the first two terms of independence. They have had the first opportunity to set the tone for Jamaica and to show us where we're going to go as a nation. Unfortunately, they failed miserably, and in both instances were replaced by the PNP, who is the only party in the history of Jamaica to have been given 18 and a half straight years to set Jamaica on the right path. They too failed miserably. So after 80 years of these two parties, we now need to take stock of Jamaica, and we have a good barometer by which to measure Jamaica. We can look at a country like Singapore that got independence around 1965, similar to us getting independence in 1962. Singapore has taken the next 25 years of their first years of independence to become a first world nation, while Jamaica continues to struggle. We have a GDP today of between 5,000 and 6,000, while Singapore is now at 90,000 in GDP per capita, per person in their country. They have a safe and secure nation. They have a very thriving economy. They have an excellent education system, a near perfect healthcare system, and one of the best GDP growth record the world has ever seen. In fact, the people of Singapore are now richer than the people of America. And they have done that without 1% of the resources that we have as a nation. The Jamaica Labour Party and the People's National Party cannot stand here tonight and tell us that we can be proud of anything they've accomplished. In fact, the current government is now recovering from what they have subjected us to during the years of COVID. They locked us down, they destroyed our small businesses, and they sought to punish our people, promising them to not even give them water unless they were to subject themselves to an injection. My fellow Jamaicans, we must not be dismayed by the fact that they have failed us. We must look forward and say that there's an opportunity before us today. And the opportunity is this. We have a new way forward, and that is to look to the UIC as not only the savior of Jamaica, but the organization, the political movement, the party with the plan to make Jamaica what Marcus Garvey wanted us to be, a united Jamaica, a liberated Jamaica, an empowered Jamaica. We're going to talk more about that tonight.
Thank you very much, Mr. Patterson. So, gentlemen, I want to start with the big monster in the room first.
Well,
Crime.
moderator, if I may interject, and not to usurp, the role that you play, but something was said, and I'm quite concerned by it in terms of
Right.
the government to threaten to withhold water for those who didn't take what I presume Mr. Patterson you're referring to, the vaccine. Mr. Patterson, you made a statement. Can you provide factual proof that that statement been actually said?
Absolutely.
I think in
And what-
particular,
and
he's
what-
referring to Mr. Tufton's statement about the vaccine and then you get the water. So, Mr. Brown, I think you need to concede that, Mr. Patterson.
Absolutely. So
No,
what
no.
I'd like to do though, Mr. Brown, and thank you so much, Mr. Bishop, is to let us have an orderly process. So the moderator is going to guide us, but I do respect the fact that Mr. Brown, you would have a question like that or any other question. So please note it down, and then at the appointed time, I'm sure the moderator will allow us to ask questions of each other.
Yes,
Definitely.
for sure. Go ahead.
Go ahead, moderator.
No, I'm saying for sure. We definitely will have the time for that and so on. So already, it seems like it's going to be a very, very interesting discussion that we're going to have. I was mentioning though, gentlemen, that I want to start with the monster in the room, which is crime. So we understand the politics, but we also understand the issues at hand. So, oftentimes statistics are stated, whether that be from the government or from the opposition or whomever. However, crime itself is an issue that never seems to go away. And of course, this is a global thing. However, one of the things I want us to oversee tonight is Jamaica's position in comparison to perhaps other countries. But before we delve into that, I have a video clip of the Prime Minister and also one of the opposition leader on the issue of crime. I want to play them concurrently, and then we can jump into that if everyone is okay with that. Let me see if I can get the first video up.
Is unbalanced and has led Jamaica to becoming an increasingly violent and dangerous place. Generally speaking, Jamaica needs to tackle the deep inequalities in our society, investing in repairing the most egregious manifestations of that inequality if we are to achieve sustained improvements in our national security situation. There is
And let me play one from the Prime Minister himself.
The guns fuel crime. They are an accelerant. They are needed to protect drugs that are transshipped through our borders. They are then turned to deal with other forms of criminal activities. We have seen in Jamaica where the weapon of choice is no longer the AK-47. It is the AR-15, it is the Glock. These are guns that are manufactured.
Right. So these are two separate takes, one from the Prime Minister and one from the leader of the opposition. Mr. Golding focused on the idea of inequality and solving the more broader social issues that needs to occur in order to solve the monster of crime. I know that is just one take by the Prime Minister, in all fairness to the Prime Minister, about guns. But the Prime Minister mentioned that guns have a serious impact on crime. And oftentimes, the guns are coming elsewhere outside of Jamaica. And so that is a serious issue. But let's take, for example, a country such as Iceland. It is perhaps known to be the country with the least crime rate. Their reason for such success is based on the respect of the people in Iceland for the police force in general, the educational system, social services, and welfare. Gentlemen, as a nation, Jamaica, how do we get there to tackle this monster of crime? Mr. Blake, you want to go first?
I went first the last time. I'm more interested to hear the USC's position on this matter.
Mr. Patterson, you want to take that up?
Absolutely, but I'd much rather allow Mr. Bishop to go first, as you know, the independent thinker in the room.
Mr. Independent Thinker, go ahead.
All right. Crime. Let's first remember that crime never occurs in a vacuum. So when we speak about crime, we have to speak about first the people and the motivations that would propel an individual to commit crime. And then we'll have to assess the types of crimes. So if we're going to speak specifically about murder or homicide and the homicide rates and the fact that Jamaica is the homicide capital of the world, then it's a different conversation about than the conversation about crime. See, crime in Jamaica is like land that I don't even want to get into the details of the politics, but I will speak about this JLP administration and the persons, the members of this JLP administration, owning a lot of land in this 8-year span that you have spoke about, Mr. Brown. I want to say to Jamaica that we need to be more vigilant. You see, when we elect leaders, we need to have frameworks in place to ensure that they cannot just use their position to enrich themselves. And there are many members of this parliament over the 8 years have, let us just say, they have procured more land than their salary could pay for. And this is one of the areas where Jamaica is not even paying attention, because a lot of the means that they would have used to obtain these lands can constitute crime. Now, with that said, we're going to talk about the excuse that a lot of persons want to put about the socio-economic conditions of the Jamaican nationals being the reason for crime. And I want to put that aside as a myth. The truth is, most of the persons who are killing in Jamaica, they are not killing because they are hungry. They're killing maybe because the means that they use to get their livelihood was already a crime. And if somebody that they were doing business with was to shortchange them, they can't report it to the police. They would have to seek other means of getting justice from the transactions gone bad in these situations. Now, when you have a government where they spend a lot of time and money passing the Data Protection and Privacy Act, which is basically a law that they are using to say that if you see a politician doing something wrong in Jamaica and you take out your cell phone and start recording him, you are the person committing crime. You see, this word crime, when we have politicians who are spending their efforts to ensure that you cannot catch them doing their misdeeds, instead of spending efforts on maybe the Bail Act or the Firearms Act, I don't even think there should be an FLA if we want to reduce crime or homicide rates in Jamaica. I think just like the US was able to amend their laws so that the citizens can arm themselves, I think Jamaica should move in that direction even before we try to make Jamaica a republic. The truth is, a free man can protect his or herself. That is one of the accolades or the responsibilities of a free man. Your responsibility to protect yourself. In our constitution, it says that though the government has the responsibility or the expectation to ensure that we have just laws and the citizens' rights are not breached, it goes on to say that we or us, the citizens, have the responsibility to ensure that our rights are not infringed by even the government. Now, the government likes the fact that our schools are keeping our citizens ignorant of these facts. And that is also a breeding ground for more crime. You see, if you want to fix crime, you check the crime first. You check the box for the crime, and then you have an honest conversation about the framework that contributes to that crime. And when we are ready for the honest conversations, and that is when we can fix the problem. So if we're going to stay here, let us use words like murder or homicide and not use crime as the word. As I said, I have given points about it. I hope we can develop in any area that maybe the panel or the viewers would want us to develop this conversation. But I think please make sure that Jamaica is ready to embrace the truthful answers of these questions once we start raising them.
Mr. Bishop, you made a good point about the definitiveness of crime versus homicide versus theft versus et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I know that you mentioned that it's the concept of crime having of the social condition of the people, and social is always tied to the economic condition as well. You mentioned that that's a myth. So you don't believe that, furtherance of what you said, that the idea of fixing the country's social and economic problem, that won't contribute to solving the complexity of crime, whether that be homicide, whether that be theft, whatever. You don't believe
it? Let me give you an example of the point that I'm trying to make. Let's take Jean Panton, for example. Jean and Panton. By the means or the measure of most Jamaicans, she was affluent. She was financially affluent, a lady with means. But she was still in a position where she needed more. Some persons say it's greed that caused it. She wasn't hungry. She wanted more. It's a mindset. There are other persons living in communities in Jamaica that survive with maybe $300 a day, 300 Jamaican dollars a day, and they find a way to get a meal with that $300, and they don't see a need to go and rob somebody's money. Do we understand what I'm saying?
I get what you're saying.
Okay.
I'll give the other gentleman a chance here, and then perhaps if needs be, we can come back to that point. Mr. Patterson.
Sure. When we think about crime in Jamaica, we have to go back to first principles. If you were to check on the Jamaican people during the early years of our independence, and even prior, we were a relatively peaceful lot. Most of our anger was directed towards the colonial masters that were still controlling most of the assets in Jamaica through the plantocracy, and today through the PSOJ oligarchy. What has been the genesis of our crime problem is really the introduction of partisan politics. And that was strategic by the colonial masters. They've always sought to introduce division into a society when they're leaving it, or even when they're trying to control it. They divide in order to conquer. And so partisan politics was introduced as the means to get us to be divided, to fight against each other. Now, you might recall that the two colonial parties were very instrumental in importing guns into the country, giving it to our young men and women, creating dons and gangs and garrisons, ghettos, even promoting squatting communities and withholding the land from the people of Jamaica and causing many of them to scrunch to make a living. These two same parties borrowed tremendously and put Jamaica into tremendous amount of debts without seeing those funds being spent on things that would have developed the nation. For example, in the early 1960s, the Jamaica Labour Party, when they were in power, they received tremendous amount of money, millions of dollars to build schools in Jamaica. They built half the amount of schools at twice the price for those schools, resulting in a shift system in Jamaica where you had too few school spaces, too many kids in one school, you have to put them on shift system. This affected our learning. So you had a lot of learning issues developing from there. The country was then sacrificed over the next several years to pay down that debt. You might hear the current government boasting that we're no longer at 150% debt to GDP. We're much lower now, but that's at a huge sacrifice. The Jamaican people were sacrificed on the altar of bad governance, of corruption. When we talk about crime, we need to make sure we understand what crime is. Somebody was asking for the definition. One of the biggest crime in Jamaica is corruption, because that denies you the money for school, the money for healthcare, the money for road maintenance, the money for maintaining a good railway system, the money to ensure Jamaica had and would maintain one of the best airline in the world. So we have lost tremendously because of the crime of corruption, and that spirals into other forms of crime. Mr. Bishop is right. You don't normally have crime directly as because of poverty. You can be very poor and not have a lot of crime. But when you have what Mr. Golden called massive inequity, and the people who are suffering from that inequity looks on and see what's really happening, they see no leadership. They see that their leaders are corrupt, their political leadership is corrupt, their political parties are corrupt, the police force is corrupt. They see that to get ahead in life, you have to be connected to somebody. You can't get there because of meritocracy. So a bright student like Mr. Blake Brown here could go to school and study hard and come out, and he has to find connections in order for him to grow up the ladder. He can't just perform very well and, succeed because he has done well in school and come out and apply himself effectively. So these are the real causation of the crime problem in Jamaica. If we had not given so many of our young men guns and created the garrisons and the ghettos as a result, we would not have the problem we have today. So if we want to solve the problem, we must begin by understanding that we cannot give those who created it the role now to correct it. They do not have the moral authority. They do not have, in fact, I believe most of them are complicit and are compromised because of it. If they were to really seek to, get rid of the crime monster we have in Jamaica, really seek to get rid of it, then you're going to have some things coming out of the woodwork. I'll give you an example. Go down to Central Kingston today. The people down there are suffering from turf wars happening between warring gangs and factions. And I'm certain that if you go and peel away the onion a bit, you're going to find that there's some political interference happening in that community and creating the problems we have today. When you have leaders of parties creating garrison communities that preserve for them a continuous block of electors, when you have persons getting more than 100% vote in their constituency, in the past, not today, it has subsided a bit, but these are the genesis of the crime problems that we're seeing in Jamaica. And we keep asking the same people, the same parties, the same groups that created the problem, we're asking them now to solve the problem. They cannot solve the problem. No matter how much billions they throw at it, it will continue to be a main. Yes, you're going to hear from my friend that the numbers are coming down, but the people of Jamaica are not feeling that. The people are still feeling very insecure. The people of Jamaica still know that they cannot trust the police enough to cooperate with them fully. So the UIC has a solution for that. We want to have a true community policing arrangement, one that makes the police officer not just this enforcer, but really a social worker, somebody who is connected with the community, lives in the community, grows up with the community. So the mother, the father, the kids know him or her, and I'm talking about more than one, of course, in the different communities, and forming a bond. And so when there are potential problems, we head it off at the beginning rather than simply focusing now on trying to shoot to kill as soon as we possibly can. Let's instead focus on building vibrant communities, productive communities. A simple thing like community centers. Most communities in Jamaica, you go across the 14 parishes, the 63 constituencies, none of them, except for in New Kingston, none of them have a very nice, well-designed public space that we call a park. None of them have a well-designed, well-staffed, well-managed community center where the young people, when they finish school or work or whatever they're doing, there's this recreational space with a gym, with childcare facility, with library facility, somewhere that brings the community together, that is well managed and well maintained and gives pride to the community and pride to our society. Instead, if you look at Jamaica, it's like a very unkept house. If this was a house and you had parents in it, you would want to lock up these parents and say you have abandoned your children. You have failed to maintain adequate, environment for them to have a good, decent form of living. I believe it's time for us to step back and stop accepting the mediocrity that we have in Jamaica and look beyond these two parties to something much better. And the crime problem will go away, beginning with us getting rid of these two colonial parties as the managers of our government in our country.
Thank you, Mr. Patterson. Mr. Patterson, you mentioned the educational aspect and the partisan aspect as far as crime is concerned. And from what I take from your standpoint is that we need to focus more on a holistic approach to what we said is monster of crime. I know in the video the Prime Minister was alluding to the idea that guns are coming from outside, and be that true, be that not true. Mr. Patterson, do you believe we make too many excuses for the solution towards crime? I mean, crime, like I said, it's a complex situation, just like almost any issue that we deal with. But do you believe as a country we make too many excuses? And of course, that could be tied to your response with regards to the partisanship instead of building a holistic approach.
Well, we have had several crime plans over the years. Both parties have been giving us a number of crime plans. But here's a simple matter, very, very simple matter. What if we were to dedicate our army to doing its job of securing our borders and controlling our customs so that we eliminate what the Prime Minister sees as a big problem, which is the guns are coming in. Yes, the guns are coming in, but that's because you're failing. If you weren't failing to manage the country properly, the guns wouldn't be, the illegal guns that is, wouldn't be coming in the way they are. So let us repurpose our army, give them full control over controlling the border so nothing comes in that shouldn't come in and nothing goes out. And of course, you have to tear away the political or the political interference, because that's a big part of Jamaica's problem. You always have the politicians stepping in where they shouldn't and creating more problems. But let's lock down the borders like sardine and make sure the guns can't come in, the ammunitions can't come in. Starve the gangs of the guns. That's number one. Number two, let's make sure all of our young people, when they leave school, if they're not going on to university or colleges, let's implement the UIC program, the Youth Enterprise, Youth Employment Solution, and give these children quality jobs that will pay them a decent wage that allows them to focus on building their skills. I know you're going to hear that the Prime Minister is announcing stuff like these and trying stuff like these, but it's not a comprehensive solution. And the problem with the government is that we can't trust them. Eh? So even if they announce new programs, they continue to fail, because you're going to end up with what we had in the education ministry, where a minister goes in and some serious things happen, and before you know it, millions of dollars are lost and the programs are not effective. So we need effective leadership. And I can tell you this, if we give the two parties 500 more years, they will still not achieve what UIC achieved in 25.
Thank you, Mr. Patterson. Mr. Brown, it's your chance to respond now and give your own take.
I'm happy that I can stand here and I can speak from a position of fact. Because fortunately, the fact is, in 2023, Jamaica experienced the lowest rate of major crimes in 25 years. That's a fact. Undisputed, once you do the numbers, speak to the people, that is the fact of the matter. So what led to this? Again, fortunately, I can speak from a basis of fact. Plan Secure Jamaica. What does that entail? It entails investments in our security forces, providing them with the vehicles they need to move around, providing them with the body cams that they can trust them. It entails investments in the Jamaica Defense Force, ensuring that they have the vessels to patrol our waters and the equipment to go around and the radar systems to track and to identify when unscrupulous entities are coming into the country. What does Plan Secure Jamaica also entail? It also entails the use of states of public emergencies and zones of special operations to disrupt and degrade capabilities of gangs, to provide our social workers and our social safety net to go in to establish peace and give these communities a social investment that they deserve. So you speak about community centers. When you look at, for example, the flagship communities in the Montego Bays, they have the community centers. When you speak of entrepreneurship, they provided them with grants. They provided them with the technical ability to operate these businesses. So Plan Secure Jamaica, it's a comprehensive plan. And most importantly, it's a plan that has results. The lowest rate of major crime in 25 years. Fact, not fiction, truth, not lies. And I will leave it at that.
Mr. Brown, I just want to put something to you. Thank you so much for your take. In the period 2010 to 2012, the Jamaica Labour Party had mentioned. I know I think at 2012 there was an election, but that last period before Portia Simpson Miller came back and won again. The exchange between Bruce Golding and Andrew Holness. But prior to that, during the Golding administration, there were mentions of crime having significant improvement. So, Mr. Brown, oftentimes the statistics will say there's improvement here. So in another 20 years, we'll hear again, or in another 10 years, we'll hear again that crime has. But at the same time, the Jamaican people, they're not seeing it that way. There have been various reports of criminal activities and murders that have affected many individuals. So beyond the idea of having a certain stat that crime is decreasing, or by what margin, by what measurement, and what is the latitude towards the measurement that we're using, what is the solution, the holistic solution to take Jamaica from where it's at to improving it on a consistent basis, a longer period of time? What is the plan of the Jamaica Labour Party for that?
Again, we have a plan, and we have a plan that has demonstrated results. Plan Secure Jamaica has worked. It's not only in 2023. The decline has been consistent since 2020. Consistent decline in major crime year after year after year. It's a plan, again, I say it and I say it once again, it's a plan that works. It's not a 1 year decline, it's not a 2 year decline. It has been a decline over 8 consecutive years. And those 8 consecutive years let me finish. And those 8 consecutive years have coincided with the implementation of that plan under this government.
Right.
Yet before in the administration there were declines. However, what happened? The People's National Party took the reins of rampant criminality and the Jamaican people not feeling safe in their homes, and an increase in major crime. We took power in 2016. The people decided that it is time for a change. And what's the result? 8 consecutive years of decline in major crime.
Right. Well, I get that. But
take, for example, maintain that statistic with the incident that occurred the other day in Kleiner.
Repeat. I didn't hear that. Repeat.
With the worst mass shooting that has occurred in Jamaican history in some 20 odd years, you still want to maintain that? You're saying a significant reduction in major crimes. This is because maybe the perpetrators of these crimes decided that they didn't want to do it. The JLP is demonstrated no ability to have any impactful control or change factor in the number of crimes committed in Jamaica. If you are purporting to the idea that the zones of specially operation are somewhat impactful in crime, then it's clear because the police force is in an area. Then we have seen where the criminal elements just take themselves and move to another area, and then you'll have crime going up in that area.
Mr. Brown,
What significant change did the JLP party make in that 8-year period that you can definitively state that impacted crime to go down this lower trajectory? I think you guys are just playing with the statistics.
The methodologies of the JSAFE statistics remains the same. So how we have done the calculation have not changed. So the comparison between now and 8 years ago and 10 years ago remains the same.
Let's not say major crime. Stop saying major crime. Let's just have the homicide rate. Homicide rate. Let's specifically speak to homicide rate.
There's that point. You asked, what can I definitively say we have changed that has led to improvements in major crimes?
Right.
We have invested the most of any administration into national security as well as education. It's a two-pronged approach. You invest in policing and the capabilities of our police and security forces. At the same time, you ensure that our people are more educated. The fact of the matter is, an educated person, they don't go take up a gun and gun down someone or a whole community in cold blood. And also, we do this in an economy that is growing, an economy that provides opportunity, an economy that provides opportunity for the Jamaican people to earn an honest living. And again, the facts are clear: 13 consecutive quarters of economic growth.
Okay, Mr. Moderator.
The people of Jamaica now are more confident in the economic outlook than any other time in our history.
Mr. Moderator,
They like where the economy is going. They feel confident in it. They feel that they now believe that they have a place in it.
I have a follow-up for you, Mr. Brown. Mr. Brown,
no,
go ahead.
Mr. Moderator, you probably have to allow us to cross-examine each other more.
Yes, for sure, without a doubt.
You know, the time gap is very far because Mr. Brown is being very facetious. Jamaica's always has an up and down graph when it comes on to crime. There are periods where you're going to see spikes and you're going to see drops and you're going to see spikes.
As I mentioned previously.
The trajectory of crime in Jamaica, the trajectory has been like this. Just as how the inflation rate in Jamaica has been like this. And just as how, hold on a second, Mr. Brown, and just as how the exchange rate in Jamaica has been like this. Now, if you narrow in on any segment of that trajectory and just look at a small segment and say, let's take out 5 years or 3 years or 8 years even, you're going to see fluctuations. The Prime Minister of Jamaica has embarked on a mission of misleading the Jamaican people, but the people of Jamaica feel the results of its failure. They may not be able to read statistics or understand that there are 3 types of lies: lies, damn lies, and statistics. They may not fully understand that, but they do understand what they feel every day. The truth is, we cannot sleep with our windows and doors open. The truth is, we continue to spend billions of dollars on putting on burglar bars on our doors and our windows. And the truth is, many businesses in Jamaica continue to suffer from feeling insecure, spending a lot of money on security services, on cameras, on security systems, because Jamaica is a very unsafe and unsecure environment. And it doesn't matter how much Mr. Brown tells you that the statistics is suggesting that major crimes are going down. Crimes in Jamaica, the crime level in Jamaica remains intolerable and is directly related to the mismanagement of this Jamaica Labour Party government and the PNP as well. The problem is, every time one of them is in opposition, they promise us that you're going to fix the problem, and when they come in, they don't. The JLP has spent the most money on crime than any other administration before. That is true. And if you were to compare the result relative to the amount of money spent it is no better than that of the previous administration, which at that time spent more than the previous administration. So they're spending more, but they're getting less. The same is true for our education system. More has been spent on education, but the quality of education and the outcome remains poor. And more Jamaicans are still lining up at the U.S. Embassy trying to leave the very secure country that Mr. Brown says we now have.
I understand that. Yeah.
You know,
Well, let me just
no,
say
Mr.
something.
Patterson,
Mr. Brown,
no, let me say something, Mr. Patterson. You
I
know,
just wanted
you
to add a
asked.
point to that. I just wanted to add something to that, and perhaps you can take that into
Sure,
consideration in
sure,
response.
go ahead.
I know the discussion is very heated and everyone, but we have to allow everyone to get something in. But I just want to refer back to something that Mr. Bishop said. Mr. Bishop had mentioned that we have to separate the terms and the ideas of what exactly crime is, because we speak of statistics, and there is a statistics out there that states that from 2014 to 2023, there has been an increase in homicide per 100,000 persons in Jamaica from 36.4 to 60.9. So a lot of those years, the administration of the Jamaica Labour Party was in power during those times. So yes, I agree that with Mr. Bishop that definitely when we look at the general scope of what crime is, we have to kind of pinpoint that, because homicide here is saying that that's not improving. So you can take it from there.
Again, we must speak from a position of fact and not fiction. And on the matter of statistics, we must be very we must be very we must be very we must be
I'm going to allow you to go very slow.
we must be very careful not to
We can't
not
all
to
talk at the same
mislead.
time. We can, Mr. Bishop, let me let
We
Mr. Brown
must
briefly
be
respond, and then I'll call on you. Go
we
ahead,
must be very careful not to mislead. And I note for a fact here in our 47 minutes and 30 seconds time on this live, Mr. Patterson has at this point quoted no factor figures. Again, he has quoted no factor figures. He has stated what he felt and what he thinks and what he believes. Unfortunately, that does not collaborate with reality. But he raised that point on the note of cherry picking time periods. Again, once the JSAFE methodology and the same methodology that has been used from 1999, once that is applied, Jamaica has experienced the lowest level of major crime in over 25 years. That is a fact.
All right, Mr. Brown.
That is a fact. And on the note, not before you go, Mr. Bishop, on the note of the spend in national security, the spend is necessary. Crime, we inherited a country that was teetering on collapse, a country that almost became a failed state. So it was necessary to spend how we spent on national security to stabilize the ship and to ensure that the people of Jamaica can look forward to a safer country in the future. I won't stand here and promise immediate returns, and we'll able to take off our grills instantly. But again, the fact is clear: major crimes are down.
Mr. Bishop, go ahead.
All right, Mr. Brown, I want to see if I can help you to clarify why major crimes are down. I want our viewers, I want you to pay attention to the fact that Mr. Brown is ensuring that he maintains the statement with the phrase major crimes being the operative phrase in his statement, because he wants to refer to one statistics. Saying major crimes is down in the Jamaican context it's a misleading statement when most Jamaicans fear homicide. They fear being murdered on their way home. They fear being murdered in a robbery. So we should pay attention to what the real problem is if we really want a solution. Most Jamaicans in the diaspora paying attention to a program like this. They want to find out what is the situation on the ground. should they feel more afraid to come home, or is it safe to come home? So let us stick to homicide, Mr. Brown. And any statistic that you give, please let it relate to homicide. Now, I am going to quote some statistics here from, I think it's Statin. So the information is statista.com. Homicide rate in Jamaica from 2014 to 2023. And I want to say, on that point now, Mr. Brown, we are not trending down, we are trending up. So
Mr.
that's a
Patterson, you want to
statement
chime
now.
in?
Mr. Holness wants the person in the diaspora who thinks that he's doing a good job to think that he's actually solving the problems. But here's the fact. Persons in the diaspora, it is not getting better. More persons are being murdered in Jamaica. In Clarendon just the other day, 8 persons one time. And there are more persons in the hospital suffering. So let us face the facts. No, when you face these facts, what you're going to find is it might lead you to the prisons of Jamaica. You might find out that what we are hearing now on the ground in Jamaica is that all of those persons may have been murdered based on the order of someone that is in prison. That's what we are hearing, you know. And we are seeing in Jamaica now where they just released another person who is you see, this is where it gets controversial now. And we're going to have the Gaza fans wanting to kill me just because I am here as a person willing to say the audio tapes that I heard sound like Vybz Kartel is guilty. I like the fact that he was released, and I want the fact that he was released on the technicality to make Jamaicans aware of the fact that the law is something very important. It is something that we should be paying attention to. Now, when you start paying attention to these things, you realize that a solution, a real solution, cannot be found on via partisan lines, Mr. Brown. And here I am, the one speaking the facts on the ground, and this is me now being willing to come out of my comfort zone that maybe one of these politically aligned individuals are going to want to kill me to tell the person the truth. Now, until we get a leader, until we get a party, a nation, a movement, a group of Jamaicans, well-thinking Jamaicans who are willing to come out of their comfort zone and state the facts, act for the truth, act for a real improvement of the situation, a real solution to the problems, instead of hiding behind a particular party, even when you see them doing wrongs, just because you are aligned to this party. Let's speak the truth of the statistics.
Let me give Mr. Patterson a chance to respond. Can I give Mr. Patterson a chance to respond to that?
Well, no, I'd want to respond because something was said that's quite concerning. I'm very disappointed that the act of domestic terrorism that took place last Sunday night was used in such a context to mislead our viewers. It's I'm very disappointed that was done, and it's important again to state it's important to
take it out of homicide.
It's important again.
Hold on a second, gentlemen. We have to
Mr.
have
Moderator, thank you.
We have to have an orderly discussion.
Wait, let me continue.
Mr. Brown, hold on a second.
Give me a
Mr.
second.
Brown,
No. I want to. No.
Hold on a second.
No. I will not yield. I need to make this point, and I need to complete this point.
You spoke earlier, so just hold on.
Yeah.
No, he raised a new point, and the moderator has given me the room to respond.
Mr. Brown.
No, the moderator.
Mr. Brown.
I want Mr. Brown to respond.
Yeah.
Yes.
We have to have a balanced discussion, and it has to be orderly. One person can't dog the mic for the whole night. So I'm going to give Mr. Patterson a chance to respond, and then we can come back to it.
One of the things that the GLP is very good at is marketing and PR, and finding ways of phrasing things to distract from the reality. You heard Mr. Blake, Mr. Brown is about to tell you, domestic terrorism and major crimes. And they try to compartmentalize things and gang on gang. They try to find every way to deflect from what is really going on. What is really going on is that for 80 years now, and that is a fact, Mr. Brown, and that is statistics, For 80 years now, we have been trusting these two parties to give us a safe Jamaica, and they just have not. Whether or not you're going to point to small periods or blips in the statistics, the fact remains the same, that you have now had 80 years. We now have Andrew Holness as the leader of the JLP, and prior to that we had Bruce Golding, and prior to that we had Siaga. But the trajectory is the same. Now, I don't think we can spend the rest of the night on this, but we can all agree that while the JLP is trying to find various ways to parse out the statistics to justify their existence and to give us the impression that they are succeeding at something we all know they're not succeeding at. We all know that. But they would like for us to get glazed-eyed and to say, oh, major crimes or domestic, whatever. The bottom line is that crime is a major problem for Jamaicans still today. Whatever improvements you think you have achieved in 25 years, crime remains a major problem today. No matter how much money you've spent on it, crime remains a major problem today. The Jamaican people are still feeling insecure. Now, if you want to tell us to give you another term and you're going to do for us what you promised in the first term and didn't achieve, and promised in the second term and didn't achieve, if you're asking us for more time, the answer from the Jamaican people should be a resounding no. Mr. Moderator, can we now move to the next topic so
Yes,
that we can
yes,
get
for
some
sure.
things in?
My intention for sure. I want us
Can
to
I know I really want the two things were said, and
Mr.
I'll
Brown,
wrap
we have
up on
several
this
issues.
one very
Mr. Brown,
quickly.
we appreciate you
Yes.
being here tonight. We have several issues that we want to get. The time will not permit for us to give any extended time. I know the discussion can always continue. It will never end because the issues are complex and they are vast and so many. But I want to bring up a topic that perhaps collides with crime and even the economy. Big topics like these, the issue of corruption, and I want to play two quick videos once again, and then we can take it from there.
The Prime Minister is at the head of the stream when it comes to national governance. The Jamaican people are growing increasingly cynical that there is no accountability among the political class of the country for wrongdoing. This referral of the Prime Minister for possible prosecution by the country's principal anti-corruption institution raises serious questions about integrity, credibility, and his fitness to lead the country. The Prime Minister cannot remain in office while this possible prosecution for corruption charges is hanging over his head. I am therefore calling on the Prime Minister to do the right thing for Jamaica. He must now, at a minimum, take away himself on a leave of absence until this matter is finally resolved. Nothing less than that will do right by our country at a time like this. I think it's good for Jamaica that the Integrity Commission has shown that it has a level of independence and objectivity that it can refer the Prime Minister of the country, the head of government.
Okay, and let me play the other.
If you really are going to talk about breaking corruption, if you really are going to talk about breaking corruption, then you have to insulate the decision makers. And it's not just the parliamentarians and the ministers or the public servants. You also have to insulate the political process. Because in our system, the political parties rely for funding on the people over whom their decisions will have an impact. And so things like the political campaign financing and the registration of political parties, those are important pieces of legislation to break that overhanging connection. So the challenge is the Jamaican public ready for this?
Is your government ready to?
Right, gentlemen. So there you have it, those two clips. So I know Mr. Patterson mentioned early on that corruption itself is connected to crime. I think most well-thinking persons would agree. Corruption is connected to a poor economy and a heavy-ridden crime society. But the credibility of the prime minister, is it in question? We know from time to time over the years, we have had the two major political parties, and we know they consistently accuse each other. We know there's been consistent. Some of them obviously are justified statements of different members of the PNP and the cabinet having issues with scandals and corruption. Likewise, the Jamaica Labour Party. Mr. Patterson, the credibility of the prime minister, and to extension, the two main political parties, the PNP and the JLP, with regards to a history of scandals and so on.
It would have been so, what Mr. Golden said would have been so powerful if he was credible and if his party was credible. Because they are so corrupt and have been so corrupt over the years that when they say powerful things like what he said, it loses its potency. It's not effective because the people are looking at him and they're looking at the PNP and they're seeing that here is the epitome of corruption. But Mr. Golden is right. The Prime Minister should step down, as well as Mr. Golden should step down. In fact, both parties, when you look at the history of these two parties, you're talking about, and I hate to say this, but it is very true. If we were to be honest as Jamaicans, if we were to assess these two parties carefully, we would come to the conclusion that we're dealing with two parties that are a part of organized crime. We would say that. And we would have all the facts, Mr. Brown. We would have all the evidence in the world if we were to decide to bring those to the table and show that these two parties have engaged in massive corruption, including funding criminal gangs, funding dons, giving them government contracts, and all of that. You can challenge me on that, but that is a fact.
No, I want to interject, please, Mr. Patterson. Allow Mr. Brown to state clearly on that point. If he's unwilling, to state clearly that we Jamaicans know.
Mr. Bishop, can we allow Mr. Patterson to finish, and then we'll come to you?
And let us not interrupt each other again. Let's allow the person to finish. And of course, Mr. Moderator, you have to cap us if we're going too long. But
for sure.
Let us finish. Now, let's think about this major corruption issue called FinSAC, which happened under the PNP, where we had the largest transfer of wealth from the poor and middle class to the hands of a few and even foreign entities. And both parties have told us for years now that they're going to give us this report so we can know what really happened and where the blame should lie. And both heads of these two parties have been a part of this. And the JLP has had now 8 years to release the FinSAC report, and they haven't. And the PNP was able to release the FinSAC report, and they have not. So we can't trust them. So we know I just partisan politics in my place. So we can't trust Golden now when him say what he must say, because we know no teeth no unite. Because when the shoe is on the other foot, he is going to similarly cover up corruption in his party and pull the wool over our eyes. So we can't trust that. But hold on. Listen carefully now to what the Prime Minister said. The Prime Minister said, we have to insulate decision makers. And he too is 100% right. But we know this. They're always able to tell us what the problem is, tell us what the solution is, but never implement it. Look at what we have done. The UIC went to the ECJ and we said, let's fix this problem of insulating our politicians. Let us have a 100% publicly funded campaign financing system, whereby you are funded as a candidate, not as a party, and you're funded by given equal access to the constituents through newspaper, radio, television, internet, town hall meetings, and debates. Give all the candidates equal access, and that is funded by the taxpayer, and no candidate gets money per se, and there's no vote buying anymore, and the PSOJ oligarchs don't own the candidates anymore or don't own the parties anymore. And the Prime Minister, through his delegates, and the opposition leader, through his delegates, refused to take Jamaica in that direction, because even though they know what the problem is, they are both complicit in maintaining the same system of politics where the PSOJ oligarchs fund their campaigns, fund their parties, and then controls the agenda of Jamaica and controls the economy and people of Jamaica through these two parties. If we want real insulation, if we want real transparency, we must have a 100% publicly funded system, and we must also have true separation of powers. We cannot continue to have the executive branch and the legislative branch being mixed together with a prime minister having a say in both branches of government, cabinet members being drawn from the Senate, which is handpicked and appointed by the prime minister and the opposition leader, and MPs also being a part of it. We lack the oversight, we lack the credibility, we lack the transparency. If we really want to fix the problem, let us get serious about fixing it. And what is clear? Neither Mr. Golden nor Mr. Holness nor their two parties are serious about a transparent and effective system of governance in Jamaica.
Mr. Bishop, you want to go ahead?
On the point of corruption, to Mr. Brown, I'm just going to say, where is Mr. Holness' statutory deduction? That's the one. Second, I'm going to ask, how is it that they want to reform the Constitution without implementing any statement or any clause of impeachment for public officials? Isn't this corruption? How can you expect persons to trust you when you are going to say, here, Jamaica, we want to change our constitution into one where I am given the position of president of Jamaica. And in this new constitution, I will be infallible. There will be no statement as to any act that I can do that would warrant my removal from that office. And if I need to say anything else to show the level of corruption present in this administration, then the person here would probably be different. So that's where I end it. That's my point to Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Bishop.
Well,
Mr. Brown?
I thank you for those points, Mr. Bishop, and I'll start with you, and I'll start with the last one on the matter of immunity and statements. Those clauses are important for this very same reason. Similar to how members on this program today can get up and say things that are simply not true, and they can get away with it scot-free because of the importance of freedom of speech. Those clauses are important for the very same reasons. Freedom of speech is important to maintain in a democracy like ours and in a free and fair country like ours. We must ensure that our leaders can speak without fear or favor. And I will leave it at that. On the note of the proposal for a publicly funded electoral system, what I would say again, Jamaica is free and fair. Let people spend their money how they wish. You cannot dictate that you should receive public funding. Why should my taxpayer money, why should Mr. Nelson's tax dollars go to you, Mr. Patterson? Have you demonstrated any form of commitment to the Jamaican people to earn their tax dollars? On the note of the Prime Minister's statutory declaration, the Prime Minister has maintained his position, and his position has been very clear. He has provided everything that the Integrity Commission has asked for. They come and they say, Prime Minister, I want this document. Prime Minister provides it. Where is the certification? The better question would be to ask the Integrity Commission. Ultimately, they are responsible. They are properly funded. So why can't they certify the Prime Minister at this time, after the Prime Minister has been quite open and accommodating to their requests? On the note of separation of powers, on the note of separation of powers, the parliamentary system has served us well. The parliamentary system is the most stable form of government in the history of the world. That is a fact. When you look at the track record of the presidential model, you see failed states and you see dictatorships. Look no further than our brothers and sisters in the South. When you look at Colombia, Brazil, Argentina, you look at our brothers and sisters in Europe. You look at our brothers and sisters, say, in a faraway land like Russia. Those nations are not free, they are not fair, the parliamentary system ensures that the Jamaican people have a stable political and economic system. And on the note of impeachment again, impeachment, quite frankly, is irrelevant in a parliamentary system. The system as designed, the system as designed is properly able to rid itself of bad actors. Unlike a presidential model, where the president is independently elected from the legislature, who heads the executive, and who has a fixed term, in a parliamentary system in which the executive is drawn from the legislature, and they survive on the basis of the confidence of the legislature. Once the legislature decides that the executive is no longer fit for office, whether it's a matter of a crime or simply a matter of a political difference, the legislature has the capabilities to remove them.
No, the position is too important for it to leave us into such a subjective manner.
The system is fine as is. Mr. Patterson spoke of what compartmentalization and marketing and PR term. Impeachment is simply a buzzword for something that already exists within the parliamentary system, and it's called a motion of no confidence. It's there in the Constitution. It can be used. Why it has not been used, it's up to the incumbent members. But what I can say is that the system as is, it's working. It's a system that does not require wide-ranging revolution and implementation.
So here we have it said by representative of
implementation of untested and failed.
Easier telling us that the system is working.
Mr. Brown, I'd like to give this, for the sake of time, Mr. Brown, I'd like to give
let me just wrap up and in just a few sentences. Let me finish. The system as is, it's working. It does not require revolution and an unthought implementation of failed and unwise ideas.
Mr. Brown, I agree with you that the system is working. The question is who it's working for. So it's not working for the Jamaican people at all in a majority sense. But let me respond to your points. You said that why should the Jamaican people finance me? I'm not asking the Jamaican people to finance me. I'm asking the Jamaican people to understand what is not working and what can work. So right now, what is not working is having the PSOJ oligarchs control our government by funding the campaigns of the two major parties, so that regardless of which of them win, the PSOJ oligarchs is still in charge. I'd much rather a system where all candidates who meet the qualifications to run is given access to the constituents. Right now, those who have the PSOJ's money get the access. The PSOJ controls the radio and the television and the newspaper, and the PSOJ also controls the two parties. So by extension, they control the narrative and they control who gets heard by how many people and how. So what we're doing, the UIC is being innovative and creative, something which I know you're happy with the colonial way of things and what you've gotten from your colonial master, but we want to move on now. We want to demonstrate to the world that we have the capacity to create better systems of governance that will work for Jamaica. So one of them is first and foremost to have a 100% publicly funded campaign financing. So candidates who qualify, who have the experience and have the education level that we need to serve in office are given access to the constituents so that they're heard. That's one. Two, on the matter of separation of powers, what you would like to preserve is this: the Prime Minister, who is not elected by the people of Jamaica directly, but comes out of the partisan machinery and makes his way to the top. For example, the current Prime Minister was selected by Bruce Golding, a disgraced Prime Minister who had to resign because of his connection with serious issues in his constituency. And he became Prime Minister by that kind of shenanigan. And then he gets to hold on to power, because when you are in that seat, here's what you have. As Prime Minister, you get to appoint 13 members of the Senate who become your lackey. And your Prime Minister wasn't satisfied with that. He had to also force them to sign undated resignation letter, so that in case they should slip up and forget who is in charge, he can just date that and fire them. That's one. Every member of the House
Authoritarian
of
power.
Representatives, every member of the House of Representatives, every MP that is on the governing side are hoping and wishing and praying that he gives them a cabinet position, because when they get a cabinet position, it's more prestige, more power, and more access to money and more opportunities for corruption. The same thing when he appoints you as a senator. You're praying and hoping that he will make you a cabinet minister so that you can become maybe a Ruel Reid as well. So the bottom line is this: the system we have in place now is ripe for corruption. It encourages corruption. It facilitates corruption. And you and your prime minister want to keep that system. In fact, Bruce Golden want to keep that system. PJ Patterson want to keep that system. The whole Uno want to keep that system. But the UIC is saying it's time for us to take the power from the politicians and put the power back in the hands of the people, or for the first time in the hands of the people. So we want real separation of powers. We want an elected Senate where every single senator is elected one per parish. So you have 14 senators who, when a bill comes to them, they look at the bill and say, how will this affect my parish? And they're going to scrutinize it. So St. Mary's views will be considered. St. Thomas views will be considered. Clarendon views will be considered, and so on. And you want in the House of Parliament now, the legislators, you want them to be independent of the control of their party, independent of the control of the PSOJ. So when them stand up in a parliament, they are truly representing not the party, not the PSOJ, but the people of their constituencies. That's the kind of separation of power we are talking about. That's the kind of Jamaica we want. A Jamaica where the people of Jamaica, not the party, not the PSOJ, is in control of this country.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Patterson. I think we lost Mr. Blake there. Mr. Bishop, you wanted to you wanted to respond, Mr. Bishop. I'll give you the chance here. I think we lost Mr. Blake there.
Yes,
Ahead,
I wouldn't want to speak in his absence. Well, I guess in the interest of the person's viewing, the truth is, as long as Jamaicans are going to keep holding up the party lines and having these conversations along partisan lines, then we can't really find a solution to the problem.
Absolutely. And that is a problem, because we can only think in, but you have people on I see the people on the comment section. And what we do, if tomorrow morning I should leave the UIC and join the GLP, I can do no wrong for a GLP. If tomorrow morning I leave the UIC and join the PNP, I can do no wrong by the PNP. That is, you know who give us that? That is what
the same colonial masters. That's the divide and conquer. That is the divide and conquer.
That is what they want, and they have succeeded. They have succeeded in getting us to become tribal, and to be so tribal that we can't even see truth when you put it in front of us. If for example, if tomorrow morning Andrew Holness come out and say, you know what, we need to have an elected Senate, every GLP say, yay! But if Mr. Patterson say it of the UIC, go away from here, so that not good, that not gonna work. And that is the kind of thing.
Because the truth is, the masses are not even operating at a level of intelligence that can analyze these issues, these topics. And absolutely. I think that is something that they would have implemented pre-emancipation to ensure that they had the minds of the masses colonized with their education systems. We persons need to ask themselves, why is the home language of most Jamaicans something that is not spoken in our schools? The truth is, the school system is more focused on creating British slaves than it is in creating productive citizens for the country. When the China Harbor Engineering Company comes here to work on one of the projects, most of the persons there can't speak any English. The Chinese engineers are talking their own language, but yet they are able to come to Jamaica and erect monolithic structures are great engineering feats with the knowledge of engineering, not their ability to assimilate to the English language. The truth is, we have always known that in Jamaica, most of the persons coming into our schools, their home language is Patois. They are All right, let us just take the skill disciplines. A teacher should not be held to the standard of speaking standard English in a class where you're teaching this child, for example, electrical engineering or auto mechanics. The fact is, on the floor doing your job as a mechanic, you don't need to be talking to anyone most of the time. So there is no real need to be operating at a certain level of in English in order to fix a car or in order to develop the skills of a great mechanic. And these are
I
some of the
want,
things that Jamaicans need to start looking deeper into. Why is it our government
I want
is
to
more concerned?
I want to just comment on something you touched on, and then Mr. Nelson, you can take us to the next topic. But you mentioned engineering in Jamaica. I want you to think about this. We have had the University of the West Indies now for many years. We have had an engineering department in the University of the West Indies for many years. I attended UTech and was a member of the engineering class of the 1990s studying electrical power engineering. You want to tell me, after spending billions of dollars on our universities, training engineers, we can build roads, we can
No,
build
look at the roads
highways?
that they're accepting now. The roads that
I
they're
know.
accepting, all right, like the road, what is a road? A road should be
No,
an elevated area to drive that has lower line areas to take off the water. Look at
yeah,
the roads
watch
in
this.
Jamaica. They have designed the opposite. We have river. They are
No,
making riverbeds and calling it
right.
roads.
Exactly. Like if rainfall at Santa Cruz and you can't drive peacefully because more than half the road is taken up by water. Little
By the
rainfall. But the
water, that's
point,
the waterway.
yeah, but the point I want to make here, Mr. Nelson, Mr. Moderator, is this. We have been spending billions on our universities and our schools, and we've been training engineers. And if you look right across Jamaica, anything that's massive, anything that's delicate, anything that needs careful attention, we have to import other people to come and do it, right? And then we give them the land. We allow them
The
to
land
own
around it.
infrastructure, and we allow them to look what they do. You now have a foreign company that runs our toll road and takes the money out of our country as we're paying tolls to drive on our own road. Again, you can have a country that has toll roads, but you have to ask the question, why is a country the size of Jamaica in need of foreigners coming here to build a toll road and to operate that toll road and to take that money out of our country? Why is it that after we have paid taxes for roads, all of us pay taxes. Every Jamaican pay tax. Once you buy something, you're going to pay 15% on it. Before you used to pay 16.5% on it. Every one of us are paying taxes. And for some strange reason, if we can pay tolls and companies can come here and be profitable off our roads, it means that we could have done it ourselves and we didn't have to now offshore the management of our roads and get tolls in place that are now double taxing our citizens while pushing them to drive on bad roads that are not maintained. But that's another story. Mr. Moderator, you might want to move on.
Thank you, Mr. Patterson. Mr. Brown, I just had a follow-up question. I know you mentioned that and welcome
So,
back.
well,
Welcome back. I
yes,
know
I
you had
had some technical difficulties. My
yeah,
my phone died.
it happens. It happens.
Yes.
Thank you for joining us back.
Welcome back.
You had mentioned that the parliamentary system has served us well, but in light of, I just want to know under which context do we believe that is the case? I mean, it certainly is not the only form of government that exists, but if we think about corruption and linking it to crime and linking it to the economy and so on, we recognize that a lot of the charges that are laid against the parliamentarians, members of parliament, for their actions with regards to mismanagement, misuse of funds, and so on. So we think about a system, like for instance, you think of New Zealand, a country that is recognized to be practically, one of the best, if not the best, the anti-corruption level. One of their focus is a heavy strategy of having independent institutions away from government. So what is the crime then in Jamaica implementing such a system? Separating members of parliament who represents the people in a local setting versus allowing them to be ministers of government and so on and so on. How bad can that be, Mr.
Again,
In what context do you mean that the parliamentary system has served us well here in Jamaica?
It's important to look at the alternatives. And the presidential model, which I see has favor with many on this platform. But what's the track record of that presidential system? Again, look at our brothers and sisters in the South and what they've gone through, what they are going through. Dictatorships and failed states again and again and again. That is clear. Parliamentary systems, on the other hand, are far more stable. However, yes, they require tweaks. And yes, they require independent institutions. That's why our framers of our constitution provided independent institutions such as the Auditor General, independent institutions such as the Director of Public Prosecutions. And over time, we have added more. Some within the Constitution, some outside of the Constitution, such as the Electoral Office and the Office of Political Ombudsman, which is now a part of the ECJ. So the track record is clear. What's the harm in trying something new? We know the result of what that new thing is: misery, suffering, and chaos. That's clear for all to see.
But Mr. Brown,
solution to the problem, or a solution to the problem. That's one of the benefits of trying something new. You might find something better.
Can I respond, Mr. Nelson?
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Patterson.
Okay.
Go ahead.
If you notice, nobody on the system here mentioned a presidential system. Nobody said that word. So Mr. Brown has a canned answer. He has a cut and paste answer. He's trying to speak to a problem that we're not even speaking to. When he refers to countries south of Jamaica and that kind of foolishness, he's trying to compare systems of socialism and communism versus capitalism or free market economy, which wasn't our discussion. Our discussion is really around good governance and having proper checks and balances. So what Mr. Brown is telling us, he would rather to continue to have the Prime Minister and opposition leader appoint our senators and create an artificial dichotomy within the Senate and have our senators being compromised in the way that they are. What Mr. Brown is saying to us, he would rather continue to keep ministers of government, also MPs, and create a conflict of interest and dilute their effectiveness. What Mr. Brown is saying to us that he's happy with the PSOJ oligarchs controlling the two parties and controlling our government. And what we're saying to him, that needs to stop. But I would like to add to that as well, Mr. Nelson, to say this. It's also important that we start having ministers of government who are qualified and competent for the work for which they're being assigned. And so the UIC has also advocated to having subject matter experts as ministers of government. So what we're going to have now is the executive branch, the nuclear executive branch, nominating the best Jamaican for the job, the best person for health ministry, the best person for education, persons who are qualified and competent. Then having those persons being vetted publicly by the Senate in a hearing that we can all listen to and follow and see if they meet the credentials that we want, and then having the House of Representatives vote yes or no for their appointment, and to remove them likewise. What do we have today? Today what we have is the Prime Minister unilaterally appointing whoever he wishes from the House and whoever he wishes from the Senate to being a minister of government, whether or not they are qualified and competent to serve in the area. The UIC is trying to lift us to a new standard, a standard of saying we need to have quality, competent persons leading our country. And I'm going to give you a big example. If you look at the way Singapore has managed their country, because they focus on a meritocracy, ensuring that persons are qualified and competent to serve as a politician and as a minister of government, and then delivering quality for their people, we end up with a first world country in 25 years, while after 80 years, Jamaica is still having basic conversation about running water and cutting ribbon for some little boxes for people and calling those homes. It's time for us to move away from that and move Jamaica to a higher standard. And that will never happen as long as we continue to trust Jamaica to the hands of those who have failed us for 8 years now.
Thank you, Mr. Patterson. And the topics, as I mentioned, they're deep, they're wide, and the discussion sometimes is never ending. I want to give us each now, as we're coming to the end of our discussion, I want to give us each 2 to 3 minutes of reflection on the debate, the discussion. Perhaps you can say something that you wanted to say and never got the chance to. So I give us about 3 to 5 minutes or so each. Mr. Bishop, you want to start?
I want to start by saying, like, if you're a leader has to lead. And once the leader for the country feels himself tied or in debt to any oligarchs, any international organizations, then you'll find that that leader may not be able to effectively lead the country. I think the leader for Jamaica that will take Jamaica to a better place has to be a leader that is solely tied or has a sole responsibility to the Jamaican people to ensure that Jamaica as a nation advances to a more productive place in the world. The fact is, as a nation, as a country, we have a lot of resources that our government is not even able to see. Just our geographic location, the equilateral belt, gives us the living conditions where we don't need to run any heat. There is no energy cost for heat in the homes in Jamaica, and we do it with good site management or maybe construction planning. We don't even need AC in our houses to be comfortable in Jamaica. We also have almost 10 hours daily of solar lighting. So, and we are not using the opportunity to generate energy from this time. You see, the Bible says a fool and his wealth shall part. And I see this Andrew Holness administration as that fool. In fact, I see the governmental collusion that has been left here to keep the people ignorant of the facts. I think they are just holding the people down because they don't really want to activate solutions to these problems. They just want to maintain the status quo, which is that most persons in Jamaica remain poor, ignorant, and hence a slave to the system, instead of coming up with policies that can truly contribute to the development of the nation and the individual or the personal success of the individual, so that we can have a better place or reach a better place as a nation. That's it.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bishop. Mr. Brown?
Well, I would like to speak last, as I will have been off for some time to gather my thoughts.
So,
So,
Mr.
Mr.
Brown,
Patterson, over to
Mr.
you.
Brown, you're not going to get your wish tonight. The moderator is in charge.
Well, no time like the present. As I wrap up, I'd like to say it's important that we remain grounded in fact and we remain grounded in truth. And a lot of things were said here today, some very true, some not so true, and some are just blatant lies. So it's important that we go through it, we go through everything, and we pick through and we recognize and take away what is important and what is true. Here are some truths. The parliamentary system works. The presidential system, separation of powers, as they like to call it in the traditional archaic sense, it simply does not work. It fails, and it fails time and time again. And the result is clear: misery, chaos, and suffering. On the matter of the domestic attack, of the domestic terror attack in Clarendon that I didn't get to address earlier, I was disappointed that the pain and suffering of a family and a community was used to mislead the public. But it's important to recognize that while persons on the show can sit and in their nice places and say things that are not true, we have a prime minister that had to go there and he had to face the people, and he had to tell them the truth, and he had to put in the work. And what's the work? What's the result of that work? He said, and he got a lot of flack for it. that the perpetrators of the crime either were to face justice or meet their maker. And that has been clear. They have either come in voluntarily to face justice or those who, opted to meet their maker. And that's a result of the significant investment in national security that this government has done over the past 8 years. On the matter of opportunity for the Jamaican people, Jamaica is looking up. Our economy is growing. Our debt to our public debt to GDP is the lowest in almost 20 years. Our kids are passing their exams. They're doing better than ever before. So what I'd like to wrap up and say, it's important we stay the course and we look at what is true and we look at the facts and not be swayed by half truths and blatant lies for political power.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Mr. Patterson, you have the closing thought.
Thank you so much. First, I want to thank all of our viewers. I see your active comments in the comment section. I really appreciate that. Some of them favorable and some of them unfavorable. I want to, particularly reach out to those of you who are highly partisan and feel you have to be disrespectful. I want to continue to protect your right to free speech. So you will see in the near future where the Prime Minister will be making efforts to shut you down because they don't want to hear from all Jamaicans, even if they don't like what they're hearing. But we like to hear from you, even if you're bitter and angry and partisan. We want you to have the freedom to speak. I want to thank Mr. Blake Brown for being here tonight. I understand that both leaders of the other two parties were invited and they have not responded. And I understand that other members of their parties were also responded. But Mr. Blake Brown, you were brave enough to show up tonight, and I really appreciate that. I think that is admirable of you. You have made a valiant attempt to make good what is very difficult to be made so. And so I want to thank you for your bravery. Mr. Glenn Bishop, I love your independent thinking. We don't always agree, but I want to thank you very much for, bringing your thoughts to the process. And I want to close by sharing with you the ingredients for a successful nation. We don't have to look very far to find them. Singapore has demonstrated to us clearly what needs to be done. And the first thing we have to do is to get rid of political corruption from our system. That's the number one thing that made Singapore the success that they are. Our leaders, our misleaders, have failed to address corruption. Even now, the Prime Minister remains tainted and the opposition leader lacks credibility. So the time has come for us to get serious about eliminating corruption. The second thing that Singapore did was to make sure that they had a very safe environment. They built a police service instead of a police force. They modernized it and equipped it to be a part of the community. And as a result of that, Singapore is one of the safest places in the world in which to live. They have also focused on maintaining public order. So much so that everywhere you go in Singapore, there's a public space that is clean, that is pretty, that is beautiful, which caters to the people because it shows that the government cares. The government respects the people. Right across Jamaica, you can see that we have a government for the last 80 years that does not care, that does not respect the people. Some of us only believe in having our nice, rich homes on the hills with our chandeliers and our beautiful high walls, but we don't want that for the Jamaican people. We talk about every poor man to have a mansion, but what we want is a Jamaica that feels like a mansion. The entire Jamaica. Nice roads, good sidewalks, street lights, public parks, public amenities, so that we can feel like we're loved and respected by our government. But that is sorely missing. Singapore also had a laser focus on building human capital. And so because of that, from the very basic school level, they invested in quality teachers, trained teachers that understands how children learn and help them to master the fundamentals of math and English, understanding each other, understanding how to work in teams, and so on. And because of that today, their per capita income and the wage levels for their employees, for their citizens, are the highest in the world. And by the way, that's a fact, Mr. Brown. That's not fiction. It's also very important that we have a clean and green, not a JLP, but a green Jamaica, where we respect the environment and we want to ensure that the Jamaican people can breathe clean air and drink clean water and enjoy a beautiful environment. For that, we have to get rid of bauxite mining, for example, because that pollutes the air. It pollutes our water. It destroys our farming communities, and it leaves an irreparable devastation in its wake by the time they finish extracting our minerals from our country. We have to have a government that is more than money, that is focused on the interest of the people. And sometimes you have to say no to some kind of investment because they're going to destroy your people, even if they give you a little bit of tax revenue. So we must say no to that. We must ensure that we have a free and fair bottom-up economy, not a trickle-down one like we have had under both administrations. We need to have an economy that respects and protects the small man, an economy that looks out for him more than the big man. The big man can help himself. Let's stop having regulations that stifle our small entrepreneurs and protect big business from competition. Let us instead invest in our entrepreneurs, invest in our people, and give them the freedom to learn, earn, and grow to their maximum capacity. And finally, you cannot continue to have an unhealthy nation and expect for us to do well in school. Our children must be fed properly. We must have a nutrition program, not just a feeding program. We're not talking about animals. And even animals are treated better because we try to balance their nutrients to get maximum yield. Let us focus on having a Jamaica where every child receives the nutrition, the education, the healthcare, and the housing that they need to succeed. Let us begin by starting with respecting, honoring, loving, and developing our people. Without that, we're nothing. The UIC is here because we believe in a Jamaica where your life, your liberty, and your property rights are fully protected. One where the land that was stolen from your ancestors are returned to you, each and every one of you. You don't have to beg, borrow, or thief to get it. You shouldn't have to slave to get it. It was stolen from your ancestors by your colonial masters, and it was withheld from you by the two colonial parties. The UIC is saying, time come to tell the two of them time up. Let's give back the people their land, empower them to build generational wealth, and build a Jamaica where all of we can live, earn, and retire with dignity in our own country. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Patterson. And thank you, Mr. Blake Brown, Mr. Glenn Bishop, and Mr. Joseph Patterson. As we suspected, the discussion was a very spirited one. And we really appreciate everyone. At the end of the day, we respect everyone, though we have different views. But at the same time, we appreciate a lively discussion in which we can assess and exert our viewpoint to the Jamaican people. Thank you, guys. Really appreciate it. It was a wonderful discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Good night,
Have a good night, everyone.